Iryna, thank you so much for joining us. My first question is, I know you have this fascinating family story about what your family did to save Jews during the Holocaust. Just please tell us the story.
It's a very emotional story for me, for my family, and for those who remember that time of the Holocaust. It's taking us to the small town of Pidhaytsi, which is in western Ukraine, in Ternopil Region. And approximately in 1941, when the German army forced and came to town and took over the town, most people, and as I interviewed the Jews who survived, they were actually happy because they already experienced the brutality of Soviet regime,
and
right?
They thought the German regime would be better than the
That's
Soviets.
right.
Yeah.
They remember the Germans from 1914, and they thought they're very intellectual, very high cultural people, and they would never imagine that something like that would happen to them, right? And so as Ukrainians, they had big hope, I guess, but slowly they show their real face. And at that time, approximately, there was maybe 6,000 or 8,000 population of that city, and 60% of them were Jews. But as I recall talking to Jews and Ukrainians and Polish who lived at that time in Pidhaytsi, they were very friendly. They live as neighbors, helping each other. And so there was no such animosity between them. But slowly it's began to show their real face and real goal, right? And I remember talking to the survivor, Mr. Michael Klar, who resides in Israel right now, and he told me the first blow, as he said, it was when they started publishing the newspaper Poland against Jews, or without Jews, right? So it's already starting some, I would say some kind of question between people.
Right, it's starting
why?
to provoke hatred. And
Yes. And my grandmother, she was a widow, and she had 3 little girls. The youngest was Maria, 9 years old. Then the middle, that was my mom, Kristina. She was 10 years old. And the older sister, Irina, she was 13. And as you know, at that time when the war is going on, there is no enough food, there is no enough anything. So they have to rely on many things around them. But thank God they have some harvest and some food, and they have a cow, and that was the big help for them, right?
Sure.
And their neighbors were Dr. Kresel. Dr. Kresel has, she has 2 sons, Dolik and Leonid. And so when the Germans said they have to gather all the Jews to ghetto, so they took all those Jews to ghetto, and those sons were there too. And Dr. Kresel was taking care of those Jews who were sick in ghetto and helping them with as little medicine as she had, but still they were connected with my grandmother because they were neighbors. And because she was a doctor, sometimes my mother would deliver milk or cheese to them.
To the ghetto.
And yes, and and she would thank them to take care of the girls when they got sick and advise them or give them some medication or something like that. So when the ghetto started, and of course there was no access to any people to ghetto, right? They were taking the Jews who can work, they were taking to work on the field or on the railroad or somewhere. But the rest, sick and young, were staying in the ghetto. So my mother would take some bread or milk or cheese or something and would sneak up, at night, and they already have, a secret meeting place, and they would, she would give those food to the ghetto, and this way they would give their piece of paper and names of the people, because my mother didn't even know that, right? But she was a courier between ghetto and my grandmother.
And so when the deportations began, what did your family do?
Deportation of the Jews?
Yeah, from the ghetto to the camps.
What?
Or was it?
Well, they were just observing that. They can't do much, right? She's a widow with 3 children. They just feel sorry and horrified, right? Because those people never came back. And so finally, in the meantime, my grandmother somehow connected with the city's photographer, Mr. Mikhail Klar. And that was at that time just one photographer in the city. And so they just, I don't know, make the deal or something, I don't know, that he would take a picture and bring the name of the people. And they had some individual living in the village, and she would deliver those photos and names, and they would create the Aryan papers, right? So that's how the whole thing started. And one day, Mr. Clark came to my grandmother's house and said, you know what, it's so dangerous right now, and they're watching us. We need to hide somewhere, right? Can you help us? So my grandmother was thinking how and where, and because they live in one little room, right? And so what they did, she asked her brother, Ivan, to come home and help out to dig the hole underneath the kitchen floor. And even to take the soil right from the kitchen, and when you throw it outside, the people would notice that something's going on, right? So they would have to mix with, because they have a cow, right? They have to mix with the manure that to hide, right? That nobody, yeah. So that one day, Mr. Clark came there to hide, right? And then my mother, I don't know how, but she arranged with the Dr. Clark for her 2 sons, Dolik and Leonid, to came as well. So there was 3 of them hiding in the hideout underneath the kitchen floor for 9 months. 9 months, and I just can't imagine sitting.
It's shocking.
Yeah, sitting like that, for a whole day, 9 hours sometimes. They will just come out at night to, to just spread the legs and, to feel as a human,
and
to
it was
walk,
dangerous for your
to
family.
breathe.
It was dangerous for your family to do this, and were they eventually caught?
There were posters around the city. The one who collaborate and help Jews will be shot. So do not do that. So in German, in Ukrainian, in Polish languages, all around the city. But my grandmother didn't even think that they were Jews. She was trying to save lives. Yeah, and eventually, one day, the Gestapo came to the house with a search. And my grandmother wasn't at home at that time. Only the children were at home. And there was Hubert and Conan, we have the name because my mother have those names of Nazis for the rest of her lives, right? And so they came with the search, with the other help, and finally they discovered that they would start walking on the floor, right? And stomping on the floor, and they feel the echoes, right? So that's how they find out that there were a hideout.
And your family was later awarded Righteous of the Nations.
Correct.
For this, yeah.
My grandmother was taken away, and my aunt was beaten by the Gestapo because they were asking, "Where's the Judas? Where's the Judas?" They replied, "There is no Judas in our house." But with the search, they actually discovered them, and she was taken first to the local jail, then transferred to Berezhany, and after 3 months on the trial, and she was executed. Even though they say, "Oh, if you bring us 20,000 zlotys, maybe we can talk to the prosecutor."
They offered a bribe.
Yeah, and they were asking, they probably paid you by dollars or gold. And my grandmother said, they haven't paid me. I don't have anything to share with you, because she would probably give away to save her life, right?
And so this story has influenced your work as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. I mean, what have you done to commemorate this part of your family?
You know, because my first documentary was about Canada's 24th Governor General, Hromadske, right? And that was kind of a tryout for me, right? And I thought, okay, I have a story. I can tell the story. Who's gonna tell the story better than I do, right? So that's what I did. And for me, that was very, very emotional and personal. And we traveled with my mom to Israel, to Yad Vashem, talked to people. The photographer's son, Leonid, survived with the Aryan papers. Probably my grandmother was, making, or
she made them, she
yeah,
helped make them, yeah.
Yeah, and provided, yeah. He survived under Ukrainian name, Bogdan Topash, right? But at the end, he was caught and sent to Auschwitz. But he never admitted that he's Jew, right? Yeah, that's the interesting story too. So I discovered many things about, past and who we are, and what we should do as Ukrainians and Jews. And, it's a tragedy for both of us. And even today, when we're sitting with my mom, with my daughter, and I have granddaughters, when my mother's starting to tell the story, we all cry. So I understand this tragedy cannot be bare and forgotten. We have to tell story. We have to keep the memory alive.
Thank you so much for your time, Iryna. Thank you for joining us.